Welcome to Conversations. I'm Suresh Kochatal. The deadline of March 31st, given by Union Home Minister Amit Shah to end the Naxal menace, has completed its term. Almost all of the Naxals, including the top leaders, have surrendered, barring a couple of them. And they too will be accounted for in the next 1 week, hopefully. What began in the 60s as a movement against zamindars, against the bourgeois, has over the years turned into a law and order issue and to almost equated with terrorism. But successive governments over the years have done nothing about it. We saw how Naxals ruled the entire route from the Dandakaranya belt, from Nepal, as I say, right down from Pasupati to Tirupati. That is a stretch which they had. Over 200 odd districts were under the influence of Naxals. Today, just two of them remain, and that too with negligible presence, Sukma and Bijapur in Chhattisgarh. How did this turnaround come about? One, when you have a resolute political leadership who decides to take a problem head on, you can do anything. We have seen how once the then Union Home Minister P. Chidambaram, openly admitting in the problem in the parliament that Naxalism cannot be rooted out. Yes, you heard it right. Chidambaram said that Naxalism cannot be rooted out. But today, how did Union Home Minister Amit Shah ji make that possible? One, have a clear-cut plan how to go about handling this. Naxalism is not just a law and order issue. It's also a social issue. The Naxals took up the cudgels on behalf of the tribals and the underprivileged living deep in the forest because development never reached them. As I said, successive governments, Congress governments over the years, never did anything for these tribal areas. As a result, the tribals were wholly dependent on the Naxals. I remember in my school days when I studied at Model High School in Osmania University. At that time, Naxalism was picking up its pace. We had students' organizations like the PDSU and the RSU, which were the recruiting grounds for Naxals in Telangana or then Andhra Pradesh. In fact, a bulk of the Naxal leadership who surrendered and who passed away were all from the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, and especially in Telangana, from many engineering colleges. The question you would obviously ask, how come these educated young men of those days joined the Naxal movement? Because that is a one-way ticket. You're never sure you'll come back. Many of them who surrendered recently have spent 30 to 40 years in the forest fighting the establishment. What motivated them to do it? As I mentioned before, it is also a social issue because they saw no development, they saw no employment, because after getting educated, after doing your engineering or even your post-graduation, these youngsters were not getting any jobs. And then they saw a neighbor or a house a few 100 meters away, which is huge, a huge bungalow, where either a politician or a contractor or anybody for that matter with huge amounts of money building a 3-storied big bungalow, lots of servants, 5 to 6 cars, money like nobody's business. And this youngster was living in a hut with absolutely nothing. That is what motivated, that is what prompted the brainwashing of these young men into the Naxal movement. Then rest is history. What began as a small movement from the Naxalbari village in West Bengal soon metamorphosized into a full-fledged war, which saw countless number of security persons being killed. And that Dantewada massacre of more than 76 CRPF men was one of the worst. But what was worse was the celebration in JNU, celebrating the death of the CRPF soldiers. That showed that Naxalism is not just a problem in the rural areas, it's also a problem in the urban areas, where the proponents of this cause, so-called cause, try to take up and change the narrative. Over the years, I can quote numerous such examples, including in the Telangana area where I live in Hyderabad. People like Professor Varvar Rao, like Professor Kodandaram, Professor Hargopal, numerous others who espouse the cause of Naxals as a social problem. What the BJP government did since it came to power in 2014 is to take the development route into the villages. At one time, contractors were scared to lay roads. Politicians were scared to travel on those roads because of landmines. But the government kept up at it. With Girijan Corporation councils and other modes, the government ensured that schools, primary health centers, good roads, and of course some self-employment schemes were started in the rural areas, especially the rural tribal areas. We all know that the Naxals thrive their funding by taking money, or rather grabbing money, or rather blackmailing the contractors and also the mining companies. This problem is acute in the Andhra-Orissa border, AOB as they call it, in Chhattisgarh, in Jharkhand, Bihar, and of course like places like Gadricholi in Maharashtra. All these places saw huge amounts of money being funneled into the Naxal system. But over the years, after the government started putting development plans in place, the hold of the Naxals on the tribals started weaning away. Most of the surrendered leaders in the recent times who have given the interviews to media have spoken about this fact, that the entire concept of Naxalism, the Maoism as you can call it, had gone away because the moment the development came and the people saw the development in the tribal hinterlands, they realized that this is not a cause worth fighting for. Justice was there, it at least came to be at the doorstep. Food was available, employment was coming in a small way. All that changed. Many of you will recollect that the entire top leadership of Congress in the erstwhile Madhya Pradesh and now a part of Chhattisgarh, including Vidyacharan Shukla, were eliminated by the Naxals. Ajit Jogi escaped with the whisker of a teeth. All that did not prompt the Congress government to kind of change the system and go for development. They just kept going as a law and order issue. It's a debatable point as to what happens to the families of those brave Jawans who were killed at various points in time by the Naxals. They have a grouse. They say that if the Naxal leaders who are surrendering are being given 50 lakhs or 1 crore, being given an employment, given land, giving some job opportunities, what about us? A husband, a brother, a sister, or just about anybody who was a soldier, who was a Jawan in the CRPF or the local police forces who were killed, what answer will you give them? The question is simple. There are no two-way solutions about this. This has to stop somewhere. The Naxal leaders also know that they had a price on the head, and maybe they're being rewarded for that price. The law and order authorities, including young CRPF officers, young IPS officers who were deputed to CRPF, did an admirable job. Be it the Cobra units, be it the Greyhounds of Andhra, Telangana, or the commando forces in Maharashtra. They all went out of the way, and we saw how Operation Kagar was the start of this entire process. Today, as the sun sets on the Naxal movement, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, will this come back again? Will the Naxal movement come back again? What will happen if the government stops development at the pace at which it is happening now? It needs to move forward at a faster pace. At the same time, you can't take big industries into the rural tribal hinterlands. There are certain industries, certain development that will be good enough for that areas. Small ones, medium-sized ones, without disturbing the environment and the tranquility of the place. End of the day, March 31st, 2026 will be a red letter day in the history of India. a day when finally, the Union government won over a movement that the late General Bipin Rawat called it as a 2.5 front war. The 0.5 was the Naxal movement that we were fighting, both the urban and the rural Naxals. While the rural Naxals may have faded away, the urban Naxals are still around. From the likes of Arundhati Roy to Sharjeel Imam and others, we still have them around. There are publications which do all this, which are funded by the Chinese, which propagate these theories. We need to tackle all of them, and that will take some time. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.